May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to God, who is our rock and our Redeemer. My wife has informed me that I am not the easiest person to Christmas shop for. We go through this usual, well, what do you want for Christmas? And often I just don't need anything, whatever you want. A new belt maybe, or something like that. But one year that comes to mind, she'll have many stories, but one year in particular, I needed a new golf bag. So I mentioned a new golf bag on my list. But then I got to thinking, she didn't ask a lot of details about that golf bag. And I had certain needs and requirements for that golf bag. The putter had to fit in the side, had to have some selective pockets, and I ended up finding just the golf bag I needed and wanted, so I went ahead and purchased it, went home, and told my wife I already got the bag, and we'll just put a ribbon and her name on it. Well, later I found out she had already purchased a golf bag for me, so that year I got 2 golf bags and then had to decide, do I take the one she gave me or do I take the one that I got me? Creating some interesting dilemmas in my life. Christmas is this season when people ask, or we ask, what do you want? And sometimes we have a ready list, and if you're under about this size, often you have lots of lists, and very specific, in fact. And there comes a time when it's just easier to give cash. It's just easier to go get what you want. And Merry Christmas. I wonder how many times God had come to Israel and said, what can I do for you? What can I give you? As I thought about that, I realized that throughout the year, we go to God with a lot of requests. And as I look over this congregation today, I know that some of you now are in the midst of praying for healing, praying for perhaps absolution, praying for a settlement of some type of conflict that we might be in. Throughout the year, there are those ongoing petitions that we send up to God. But just now and then, when everything is pretty well in our life, and we hear the murmur from God, what can I do for you? We often respond, well, I've got just about everything I need. Maybe just add on a little bit more to what I already have. As you read through the prophets, you will find that God came to almost every one of those and gave specifics of, this is what I want you to do. This is where I want you to go. And this is what I want you to say. When King Solomon was the new king of Israel, in a dream, God came to Solomon and said, Solomon, what can I do for you? And Solomon, being overwhelmed by the task that lay before, said, give me wisdom to rule this mighty people. As God comes to us in a variety of ways, what do we respond that we really want from God? And as we think about the gift that God has given us, that of Jesus Christ, we realize that whether we answered correctly or not, God realized what we really need is a sense of God's presence in our lives. We need someone to walk this journey with us. And if we are sensitive to that spirit that God has given us, we will detect God's presence every day in a variety of ways. There have been those times in our lives where we feel overwhelmed, We're not sure of the future. Things are uncertain. And I would hope that in those times we can be a bit like the Englishman who, during the war, the story was told, looked out over the area where his house once stood, which was now nothing but a hole in the ground. And as neighbors came around to offer aid and support, he said, "Well, I've always wanted a house with a basement, and now I jolly well can have one." God has provided the war has provided the basement, so we start from there. Christmas and Easter come together for me in a number of ways. Advent is the remembering again that God has come into our world, that reminder that there was a time when the world literally did have to wait for God to speak in a new way, for God to be present in a new way. And as we go through the Advent season now, it's kind of a, what are we waiting for? Christ has already come. And yet, there was that time when God seemed strangely absent. And one of the things we strive for and want is God's presence in our lives. Christmas is a time when we find out who really loves us in the family. Who's going to show up on Christmas Day? Or are we number 2 this year? Christmas is that time when we have to sort out, several people want us to be at their house. Who do we go to? For me, the better memories come, not that things aren't great now, Julie, but the better memories come when when our kids were smaller, hadn't married, and we went back to my brother's house, which kind of served as Grandma's house, and my brother and 2 sisters, and the whole family was there. And there was a period or 2 when we had about 10 little grandkids all lined up on the one sofa because they were all at that age. And then they grow up, and then they get married, and then there's another call on their life. Well, we need to go see them this year. And some of those relatives that I saw so often back 30 years ago, I don't see much anymore unless I go out of my way to stop and see them. Things change, don't they? Things adjust because our priorities change. I sense God was thinking about that when he was thinking about his creation and a way to be present with mankind continually and eternally. And so Christ was the answer. And some interesting analogies in the scriptures about the Trinity. And God was always there. The Spirit was always there. And Jesus Christ was always there. And it's like that the head of the company, 3 CEOs came together and said, what can we do to break through to these individuals? And God said, if we could just somehow always be present, to become a part of their heart, to become a part of their inner life, maybe we could lead, maybe we could guide, maybe we could direct them in the living of their lives. Christmas is a time when most of us were here last night, because that's one of the festive occasions. Easter is one of those times when the church gathers because it's a reminder of what God has done for us through Jesus Christ. There are those traditions that mean so very much to us. And as you think about all of the ways in which you have celebrated Christmas and Easter, there are memories that come back of special worship services, special times that God drew close. And for that, we are forever grateful. If you refer back to the scriptures, Jesus, early in his ministry, referred to the Beatitudes on that Sermon on the Mount and told how God wants to be present with you in the various areas of life where life is tough. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are tired and labored, and take my yoke upon you, and I will give you rest." Jesus said, "Ask, seek, and knock, and these things will be open to you." Time and time again, the words that Jesus shared speak of the attitude that God wants to break into our lives and be present with us. As we journey through life, there are those times when we struggle. And you think and reflect back on Mary's life, and early on, the struggles came with the birth of Jesus and the flight into Egypt, and then his growing up, and then the beginning of his ministry, and then how that seemed to go in a direction that she never figured on. And finally, to watch him die. And then the strangeness of those messages that he's no longer in the tomb, but he's disappeared. And then we come back, for me at least, the road to Emmaus. After the Easter word that Christ is risen, 2 disciples walk. And while they are journeying, the presence of Christ comes and is present with them. That to me is why Jesus came, to journey with us and become one of the greatest gifts that we have ever received. That every day we can recognize and pray that whatever we're going through, God will take that journey with us in the presence of Jesus Christ and his Spirit. Be not afraid as a reminder that we can overcome whatever happens in our life. The message and the greatest gift we have received is the very presence of Jesus Christ. In the Christmas message, we basically have the whole scenario and guide to how we live. There's Mary and Joseph, and they received Jesus into their life. And that's our calling, to receive Christ into our life. And we wish the whole world would receive Christ, and we know that things would be different. The wise men followed that star, and that's our task as well, to ever be vigilant to where God may be leading us. And the shepherds came and worshiped. And that's our ongoing task, not only just on special occasions, but somehow to find each day time to come and center in on the fact that Christ is present with us. And then the reminder that Mary treasured all of these things and pondered upon God's working. And every so often, we are literally overwhelmed with how God has indeed worked in our lives and been present.